Welcome to the Foul Front Podcast, a part of the Waypoint Outdoor Collective. I'm your host, Ben Page, and this is your source for hunting, outdoors, and conservation conversations. In an eclectic and sometimes unorganized fashion, I appreciate you coming by. All right, today I'm joined by Ramsey Russell, the founder of GetDucks.com, a world traveler, a passionate outdoorsman, a waterfowl hunter, and a man dedicated to helping people navigate through their experiences on 6 different continents. And as I've just found out, an avid conversationalist as well. An entrepreneur, a family man, and a Mississippi native. How'd I do on that intro there, Ramsey?
Very good. Felt like I've known you my whole life, Ben.
Awesome. Well, I suppose we ought to start it off with kind of what you do for people.
Ben, thanks for having us tonight. You know, GetDucks.com started as just a hobby. An outfitter in Canada asked me would I bring him hunters. And, you know, sure. How that started though is right after I graduated college, I was broke. I was starting a family. I was doing this, and I always wanted to go to Canada to shoot those little Canada geese, the little tinies, I call them. I always wanted to do that. I always want maybe shoot some snow geese, you know. And a friend and I booked a trip through a big agency, and it was an unmitigated disaster. You can't make up what a comedy of errors that hunt was. And I'd worked hard for that dollar. I mean, I'd saved and had gone on this trip of a lifetime, and it was a disaster. And got out, and this was before the internet is what the internet is today. You know, this back in Alt Visa type days. It wasn't, Yahoo type days. It wasn't near what the internet is today. And I did some research, and I found an outfitter who later described it as it's like the FBI and IRS and paramilitary swarmed up in the driveway and interviewed them all at one time. And we were on the phone about 2 hours, me asking a whole lot of questions about his hunt. And I showed up with 3 buddies, and we had a great time. His name was Jeff Klotz, Alberta Flyway outfitter, since retired. But it was magical. It was everything we wanted in a hunt. And the following year, maybe 10 or a dozen of us showed up. The following year, 25 people I knew went up there and hunted with him. And he called me out to have a cold beer in the garage where he and the boys hung out. And he said, Ramsey, I'd like to ask you to be my booking agent. I'm like, what the hell is a booking agent? I'm a forester for the U.S. federal government. And he explained, well, do this and do that. He said, look, Ramsey, my guides want to take your hunters. Man, they show up, they've packed right, they tip good, they know how to call, they know how to shoot, they're easy to get along with, and they cut cards. I mean, they wrestle in the front yard to see who gets to take those Mississippi boys. And so that's kind of sort of how it started. GetDucks.com started with me, a forester with the U.S. federal government, sending hunts to a guy in Alberta. And it kind of sort of grew surprisingly, and it accidentally almost, I would say, but shortly thereafter, I wanted to go to Argentina. To this day, it remains one of the best wing shooting or duck hunting experiences on earth. But I wanted to go to Argentina, and I teamed up, got invited to go with somebody who kind of said, hey, you can book some hunts and do this and do that. And I couldn't get in touch with the guy. I had some guys wanted to go, and I couldn't get in touch with that boy. So I called the outfitter direct. And with that phone call became a realization that things weren't what they seemed. That it just, I won't say it wasn't fair. I say it's tantamount to criminality. I didn't like it at all. And as I started piecing things together, I said, there's a better and more fair way to do business. And as someone like myself that wanted to travel, that was wrestling with some of these issues, that's 2 strikes right there. I said, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And And that's kind of how it started, you know, and I tell you and I were saying earlier, and I've told this before, but since those days, since 2003, when we incorporated to sell Alberta and then later Argentina and then some other U.S. hunts back in the day, since that time, the internet's exploded. And it's incredible to me that anybody on earth that has a smartphone and a couple of bars has more information readily at his fingertips in an instant. What's the capital of Rwanda? I mean, anything.
Right.
You got that question at the snap of a fingers right there in your phone on that smartphone. Google it. Boom. It's there. So anybody can find anything on the internet, and yet our business model has continued to grow since then because the downside of it, especially in the instance of social media, where everybody can create anything for nothing, is we all know whether we've ordered something or we've bought something or we've gone somewhere or a service or a product, you know, we all know that things can be and are represented online differently than they really are. You know what I'm saying? It's not. You can find anything on the internet, but the downside is anybody can be anything on the internet, and so it's a minefield. And I'll finally wrap it up with, you know, I've got all kinds of clients. I've got clients across the whole economic spectrum, and I don't care if you're that guy that has to save money like regular folk to go on a trip every few years, or you're that guy that money's no object and you can go on 5 trips a year. At the end of the day, you know, money's money and time is money. But the greatest limiting factor really is time. You know, and time misspent on the wrong trip or a trip that didn't satisfy your objectives or whatever is wasted money. I mean, so, you know, it's time and money. And we just learned a long time ago that money, that time was a big limiting factor. And that, you know, so really we organize trips, the right trip. You know, for example, I've got a selection of hunts down in Argentina, and they're not the same. In fact, they're distinctly different by design. So if somebody calls up and says, "Hey, I want to go to Argentina," a lot of times nowadays, because of the details on our website, a lot of people call and say, "Yes, sir, I've been looking at your website and I'm interested in Rio Salado or I'm interested in La Paz or whatever." They've kind of narrowed down to what their focus is. And then they call and ask a few questions. But if somebody just calls me up and says, "Hey, I heard about you and I want to go to Argentina. I want to take my son next year when he graduates high school," I've got a lot of questions for you. You know, because duck hunting is not like light bulbs. Anybody that buys a light bulb expects the same thing, on, off. That's all a light bulb does, is on and off. We all expect the same thing. As long as it goes on, as long as it goes off, we're happy. Duck hunting is highly subjective. Very, very subjective. We all want a little something different. You and I sitting in a blind, we describe it later that morning over breakfast different. You know, we remember different things. We you know, you like shooting all those whatever the mallards. I just seen them shot 6 ringnecks. You know what I'm saying? It's just it's subjective.
Yeah.
And so I've got questions for you. You know, I need to know, what are your expectations? What are your objectives? You know, and I've got just a whole litany of questions. I mean, had a client call today and he says, "Well, I've got some questions for you." I said, "Great. I got some questions for you too." Haven't read your email. And we swapped questions and we found just the perfect hunt and, just what he was looking for. I'm certain. And I think one reason being that, my wife and I, and I'll tell anybody, she's the brains of the operation. I'm just a duck hunter. She's the business end of it in terms of administrative and organization and detail. She's a detail person. I'm you know, I'm kind of a big picture. She's a microscopic person. So we complement each other very well in what we do because it's a very detailed business. Organizing your travel is just very, very detailed. Everything's got to be perfect. You know, one number wrong on the spreadsheet, and you're sitting there waiting on a ride to a lodge. Everything's got to be lined up. Everything's got to be perfect. There's a lot of moving pieces. And I think one of the biggest differences in what our agency does versus an outfitter. Consider this. You're selling an Argentina duck hunt. And I'm using that for an example. You sell an Argentina duck hunt. And somebody comes up and asks you about Argentina duck hunting. Where are you going to point them? You're going to point them to your hunt. That's how you make a living. See, senor, I got the very best. Oh, yeah. We got the gray birds and the black birds. Yeah. Man, I'm all in on selling you my hunt. And the distinction is duck hunting is not one size fits all, especially when you start going somewhere like Argentina. Maybe you want to shoot a lot of doves. Maybe you want to shoot doves one afternoon and shoot a bunch of ducks. Maybe you want a full combo. Maybe you want to be convenient to the airport. Maybe you don't mind driving further. You see, there's a lot of little nuances in this. And
Sure.
where I feel like I have an advantage in this is the fact that we've been down there for 18 years. I've been down there for as long as 8 to 10 weeks, knocking on doors and putting boots under a table and in the marsh and looking and seeing what everybody's got. And so when someone calls me and we begin to define their budget, their ambitions, what they want to do, how long they want to go, what time of year they want to go, I can look at a portfolio of hunts and reconcile it best on their behalf. I work for the client, not for the outfitter. And trust you me, in situations like Mexico or Argentina that we have selections, the outfitter don't like it. I mean, they're the best, but I know that they're the best for some people, not for everybody. And so that's kind of what we do. And it's not just, hey, call me up and buy a duck hunt. There's a lot of blind corners and dark alleys. There's airfare. There's passports. There's in a lot of countries, you're dealing with bird import. There's a lot of little details on this, and we're able to provide guidance in a lot of those directions.
Yeah. It's like, it's the difference between buying a Walmart suit and a custom tailored suit.
Yeah, but there's a lot to be said for a Walmart, and
Yeah.
Walmart fits my budget and taste in a lot of different directions, even back in the fishing section. So, but yeah, I mean, there's something for everybody, and there's a place and time for everything, and kind of now. So that's kind of how we started with Canada and Argentina, and one of our real strong destinations is Mexico, and I really avoided Mexico for a while, not because of anything you might have read in the headlines or anything like that. No, I've been going to Mexico since 1989. As a tourist, back when I worked down in Texas, driving across the border and spending time. I love Mexico. I love it. I love Mexican people. I love the country. I love everything about Mexico. But the reason we didn't add it until later, I'd say about midway through the life of GetDucks.com, the reason we didn't add it because really and truly, yes, going to somewhere like Argentina is more expensive total budget, but Mexico is really, Argentina represents more bang for the buck. Even though you're going to spend more total money going to Argentina, it really represents a whole lot more bang for the buck. Mexico's a little expensive. It's up there way. I'm not saying it's too expensive. I'm just saying, apple to apples. You shoot a lot more birds and get a little bit more for your dollar, even though you got to pay more money for airfare to go to Argentina. And where we really started shifting to Mexico was, I truly do believe, I get asked this all the time. We got asked this in a question and answer thing in social media the other day while we were down in Africa was, where's the first place I should travel? Everybody in the car unanimously said Mexico. Timing's good, doesn't conflict with American seasons. It's familiar species. It's species that, North American species, you just, they're familiar. We get it.
Right.
and you can bring your wife, have a good time. Bird import is easy. It's a lot of different reasons everybody ought to think about going to Mexico. You get a nice suntan while you're down there. It's warm, whatever. And, but, but Argentina is still one of the best hunts. There's no doubt. It's just, but the reason we started going to Mexico is I had an increase in client base. And one day I was sitting around over cocktails with some friends and clients, and they were asking about going somewhere and doing something. And I was pushing Argentina. He says, man, that all sounds good and fine, Ramsey, but I'm a business owner. And that extra 2 days travel, I need to be at the office. Wow. Snap. Boom. That made sense. And that was really, that was really where, we realized that, money, again, what I say, time's a limiting factor. You start looking at business owners and managers and people in that kind of workflow. It wasn't the money. They go to Argentina. It was the time. They didn't have the time to go to Argentina. They needed to be at the office. There's a lot of businesses where if the boss man's gone, business don't roll. It just, man's got to be there. And so that's how we started. And from there, so Argentina, Mexico, Canada's kind of in place, and we coasted, but then something strange kind of happened. It's like, in one hand, we were steering it and exploring and finding and doing. And then it kind of took a life of its own because, I would categorize, and every duck hunter and every client is a standalone individual. Every single one of them. You really can't lump them once you get down to the nuts and bolts of this service industry. And it is a service industry. It's a hospitality business. Hunting in general, if you're an outfitter or a guide or a booking agent, this is the hospitality business, man. It's all about service. Bringing true value to the customer beyond which they're actually writing a check. I mean, it's all about value, and customer service is long lost on too many industries nowadays. But, we work for the clients, bring service. We do. It's a hospitality industry. And, I lost my thought train. Sorry about that, guys. But it's a people business. And that's what we try never to lose sight of. Totally lost my thought train there for a minute, Ben.
Well, I know you were talking, you talked a little bit about, South America, Central America. What are some of the continental differences in wing shooting between Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia?
Man. Every destination is standalone. You've got to take it. You've got perspective in duck hunting. We all know what duck hunting is in American standards, in American terms, but it varies hunt to hunt. And I just remember what I got lost saying was that if I tried to group our kind of client, to get ducks client, into two broad categories, I've got trigger pullers, guys that are just going to have fun and shoot and just have fun, and collectors. And between the two, that's where we started to go beyond Mexico, Canada, and Argentina. That's how we ended up in 6 continents. And it's a combination of both. It's the collector, primary, they say species, but I know that what they're really collecting are experiences. Those birds are just placeholders for experiences. And they're chasing new experiences and new hunting adventures. And really, it's like we weren't really steering it. The market was coming to us. What about red-crested poachers? Have you ever been to Asia and hunted? Have you ever done this kind of thing? And so we began to explore. And that leads right into your question. Because, all I do all day, every day is talk to duck hunters and duck guides. And I love it. It's so rewarding. I'm telling you, the most rewarding aspect of my career and my life, my job, are the people. I love talking to duck hunters. I love it. And believe it or not, guys, I listen as well as I talk. But when you go into a new location to hunt, you've got to roll with the punches. You got to take what the day brings. It's no different going to Azerbaijan or Mongolia than it is going to wherever you're going to duck hunt opening day this year in your home state with your friends. Maybe it's going to be great. Maybe it's going to be cloudy. Maybe it's going to be sunshiny. Maybe the ducks are going to come in like it's opening day, or maybe the weather or the lack of shadows or no wind. Maybe they're going to act funny and you have to adapt. You have to move. I had a person come up to the booth at Safari Club International last year. And man, this guy lives and is an outfitter in one of those enviable parts of the world that they don't shoot nothing but greenheads, and lots of them, 7 a day. And he's got a piece of property and they put a whooping on those birds. Mallards, all mallards. There's a lot of species of ducks out there, but mallards, and the reason mallards really define duck hunting, especially in America, is because all the rules that we typically associate with duck hunting are written for the mallard. Heck, mallards wrote the rule book. Calling and hiding, decoy placement, wind direction, and think about it. That's the A game right there. It is the mallard rule book. Well, so he says to him, I want to go down here to Argentina. I want to do this, but now I'm gonna tell you, I want them to act like mallards. I want them paddle down the decoy. And I said, well, great. There's no mallards in South America. Okay. That's what I got to tell you about you want to shoot orange feet down in your decoy at 15-yard chip shot. There aren't any mallards. And you use a little bit of them kind of rules and the basics of it, but you're not hunting mallards. You're hunting rosy-billed poachers. You're hunting different kinds of pintails and teal, not mallards. Now I've been fortunate to shoot mallards on 4 continents. If I'm thinking right, Africa, they don't have it. There's mallard-like ducks on all the continents except South America. You've got like this greater mallard complex. You've got the mallard, the black duck, the mottled duck right here in North America. The Mexican mallard down in Mexico, which is also North America, and they quack. You can play that mallard rule book on them to an extent. You get down to Australia, you got the Pacific black duck. Same in New Zealand. New Zealand has mallard, of course, that were brought in. There in Africa last week, yellow-billed ducks, eastern spot bills over in Asia, and you can play the mallard game with those birds. But then you go to different extremes, and all those rules are gone. There are waterfowl species you can't use conventional methods. They're not, that pygmy goose, he's not going to come into decoys. That's not his nature. That's not his habitat. The whiteback duck in Africa, they're not going to fool around like that. That's just not their thing.
What's it like taking that playbook into a new, field, as it were?
Man,
what's it like
awesome,
the first time you, yeah.
Man, that playbook has got all kinds of hand scratchings and doodles in the sidebar. When you start chasing species, which in my way of thinking, my personal way of thinking, what compels me is not X species, it's where that species takes me. And the game that he plays, you're not playing the mallard game anymore. You're duck hunting, but you're playing on his set of rules. And for a guy like me, or you or anybody, it's the whole challenge is figuring out that game. That's the whole thing, and that's what I love about it. Now, I promise y'all, I could be thrown in that briar patch of shooting nothing the rest of my life with greenheads over decoys. I would suffer through it, and I'm being facetious. But at the same time, I really enjoy getting out and playing with the different species and where they take me. The pygmy goose, the African pygmy goose, is a prime example of species versus experience. When you think of Africa, the word Africa evokes to most people Lion King images and the Serengeti and desert and acacia bushes and giraffes and zebras and rhinos and elephants and lions roaring and this whole wild kingdom experience. And it is all that. It gets most parts of Africa, at least southern Africa, get about a foot of rain a year, an average year. Not much. So it's very deserty. It's dusty beyond anything you've ever seen. But it does get water. There is water. There's rivers. And where you find water, you find waterfowl. And the yellow-billed duck, which is very mallard-like, double white wing bars, it quacks, decoys, the whole 9 yards. Not a mallard, but it's close enough. And the red-billed teal, a very beautiful little bird that reminds me of a white cheek pintail in its own way. They're very ubiquitous they're generalists. They're ubiquitous throughout the whole country. Everywhere you go, you see them in little potholes and stuff. The Egyptian goose, which is really a duck, you see him anywhere around grain, all the big pans they call it, or the dams, and there's grain nearby. You'll see tons of those birds there. But that little pygmy goose, it's like holding a double quarter pounder. Weighs 9 ounces. And he's tiny, about the size of a green wing. It's a perching duck, but they call him a pygmy goose. And that little stubby beak he's got is for clipping. It's like little clippers, little hand clippers. And he specializes on lily pads. That's what he eats is just water lotus. He eats the little shoots. He lives in that environment. Well, now think about it. I'm in practically a desert environment, and I'm chasing a bird that lives in old oxbows that have lily pads. That takes you so far off the beaten path in Africa to find that bird that you're seeing a whole different part of Africa than what you would have otherwise.
Yeah, you're riparian Africa. Game. Yeah,
that's it. Well, you're in a very, very hyper focused part of Africa. That's where it is. Hunting that little bird was a lot more like big game hunting than duck hunting. That's where that rule book, you just fold it up and put it in your back pocket for a later date. It's just, you've got to, we had gotten, we were down in Zulu land. We had knowing what we were interested in those birds. The outfitter had detailed a couple of professional hunters out who had hired some local villagers to beat the bushes and try to find some of these birds. And thankfully there were only 2 of us hunting when we showed up, and because they'd found 4 of them about 2 hours away. It's about 1.5 miles, 2 mile long oxbow. And we got up that morning and drove. It was a huge adventure. We got up on the main road we were going. We were just about 30 minutes from there, and the local villagers had thrown all these boulders and logs and stuff out in the middle of the road. They didn't have water. And so they were protesting. Well, there wasn't no getting through that. So we drove back down the mountain and stopped in town, got gas, and asked for alternative route. We went through a old road and another path that you'd never seen I guarantee that road never seen a road grader, because it was all rocks. It was all big stones. I mean, you couldn't grade that road if you tried. I know I knocked some fillings out just being on the passenger side of that ride. Finally, we made it there late. Instead of getting there at 8 o'clock in the morning, we were there at 10. Well, the scout had seen them 4 days in a row at about 8:30 in the morning. And falling off that desert environment down at the bank of that oxbow with binoculars and shotguns, we started glassing. And you want to talk about finding the proverbial needle in a haystack. 1.5 mile oxbow full of lily pads, and we're looking for 4 double quarter pounders with feathers. That's kind of what it was like. So we're down there glassing, we're looking, and boy, the bird life was amazing. There were a lot of white-faced whistling ducks. There were these beautiful little flycatchers. There were just the bird life was amazing. Everything but the birds we were looking for. There were no crocodiles or hippos. We were assured as we were walking along, and it was just kind of like being in Mississippi. The temperature was close to 90 degrees. It was very humid, so the heat index was higher. There were familiar plant compositions, coffee weed, cuckleburs and vines and morning glories. And so we spent, I don't know, better part of an hour down there glassing and never found them. So we said, well, let's get back to the truck. We'll go over to the other side. We'll get up on a high vantage point. We'll look down and maybe we'll get lucky. And we were glassing and had about given up. And in fact, the outfitter said, man, I think that roadblock did us in. We should have been here 2 hours ago. That's when they've been seeing them at 8:00. We know maybe they're in here eating and now they've flown off to the river. Who knows? And Jake Latondras was filming for us, and he had set up a camera just to do some B-roll with a big lens. And he said, is that them over there across the way? We all trained our binoculars over across the lake. Sure enough, there were two pair of, there they were. At about 100 meters from where we had just walked in. So now we got to go all the way back around, walk all the way back in, figure out how to get up close to them. And it's like just luck. The stars lined up. Those two little birds were sitting there glassing, picked up two pairs, picked up and flew directly across that oxbow and landed right down at the base of the mountain down below us. And it was a little heroin and adventuresome, that it was nothing but solid, loose rocks and sand and gravel as we slid our way down a half mile and, snuck up on them and finished the deal. But, that's how you hunt some of those birds it's not the whole seduction and artistic seduction of bringing birds in. You've got to take the hunt for what that bird is and what that habitat offers and where your limitations are. And just in the whole cultural context of it all. And let me say this. American duck hunters are the best in the world. We are the best duck hunters. We are the most serious duck hunters. We are the most passionate waterfowlers. We have elevated every single aspect of duck hunting to art form. The firearms, the ammunition, the science that goes into ammunition technology, the decoys, the camo, the gear, the blinds, the ATVs. I mean, everything, the motors, the boats, you could go on forever. Anything involved with duck hunting, we have taken to a level far beyond what any other culture on the world could imagine for going after a duck. They don't have it. I mean, it's a spectrum, but generally at best, it's a mimicry of what we do. I would say Australia best reconciles with the American mindset. The duck hunters they've got are good duck hunters. They've got calls, they've got decoys, they scout, they set up. It's mud motors and whole works, flooded timber. I identify more with an Australian duck hunter than practically anybody else. At the other extreme, you go to Mongolia. There's no duck hunting culture. They've got birds. They've got species that don't exist anywhere else. Bar-headed geese, ruddy-shelled ducks, common-shelled ducks, other species, swan geese. I've never seen them anywhere else in the world but Mongolia. And boy, are they organized, man. Remember, they're nomads by historic nomads. I mean, they could, there's 33 million head of livestock, 3 million citizens, not a single strand of barbed wire because the land belongs to everybody. And remember, the whole Genghis Khan thing, those people just, they move, they follow the great, they herd, they graze and they chase the herds and they migrate on horseback. And that's kind of their culture, not duck hunting. So we show up in Mongolia one time to hunt and chase these birds. God, what an amazing country and everything else. And we get to where we're going and he points and goes, well, there they are out there in that little water out there. And we're going to scout and look at some more stuff too. So there's 10 people and one of them had a pair of knee boots. That's it. And knowing what we were kind of getting into, I suggest we all bring a few decoys and we all bring a few tricks in our bags, to figure, and we all be ready to roll. And we were. But the one sack of decoys they handed us, I don't think if you gave me the rest of my life, I could have untangled those. They were so tangled, I'd have just thrown the whole sack in a bonfire rather than fool with all that. But they were just a hodgepodge of decoys, about 24 decoys that other clients had brought over the decades and had ended up in a croaker sack, and it's like they had just melted and bonded together. It was impossible. I dumped it out on the water before dark, and I just realized, we're not going to hunt over these decoys today. And we all broke out. We'd all brought 3 to a half dozen decoys, so we had enough for a perfect spread. But you're 6,500 miles from home. There's the water. You look at it 15 minutes before dark. You talk about it at dinner. You talk about it again over coffee for breakfast. You show up and you hatch a plan. Nobody's ever hunted swan geese before. Nobody ever hunted the shell ducks before. There were mallards and pintails and Eurasian widgeons and Eurasian green wings and other birds, but that's not what we were there for. They don't know what to do with ducks that you don't want to take home, because they don't eat ducks. They're nothing whatsoever about their culture is ducks. They know how to find them, find the water. But other than that, so you don't shoot really a bunch of mallards and stuff like that. You're there for certain things, and that's what you key in on. And you have to just it took us a few days to figure out those common shell ducks weren't coming in. They were feeding on a mud flat about a half mile from this one place we were set up to hunt. There was no way to access them at all. They were a half mile through waist deep mud. They could walk on that mud. We couldn't. There was nowhere to hide if you could. It was just mud, soup. But we finally figured out what their flyaway was. Every morning at daylight, they were coming up to go somewhere, and they were coming right down a certain little thread of stream. There was one little stretch, and we took turns intercepting them. Just one morning you'd go after them. Next morning, me and him would go after them. Next morning, he would go after them. We all got our common shell ducks. Believe it or not, I took a mojo, a small mojo, like a dove mojo, because it packs easy,
Yeah.
And those swan geese were eating it up. They would see that thing from a mile away and would just start waffling coming into it. And so, but that was so rewarding, was putting the pieces together. That's what the challenge was. Now break, Mongolia, they got the bright idea that there were 4 of us in camp, 2 of us should go to a north camp, go up there and scout and look at it. We had about a week, so why not? So we drove 6 hours. There were 2 tire tracks for 6 hours through the Mongolia wilderness, the steppe country. And we stopped at lunch next to this rock, this big stone, about as tall as I am and square like a refrigerator, just out in the middle of nowhere. And we stopped and we're eating our little old lunch or whatever. And I noticed there was like some flowers and blue bonnets and things around the bottom of this rock. And so I asked Gala, whatever his name was, I said, what's up with this? He goes, oh, that's a headstone. I said, really? He said, oh, it's Ramsey. He said, that thing is 1,000 years old. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, do you know that rocks, that stone doesn't even exist in Mongolia? It must have been brought in from thousands of miles away. So whoever it was, and nobody knows, was very important. Probably Chinese or something, an emperor or something that happened to be here a long time ago. That's just crazy, the stuff you'd see. And so we ended up going up north, higher up in the mountains, beautiful 10,000 acre valley of barley and wheat. We scouted for most of a day, and there was nothing up there but ruddy shell ducks. There was still ice. The lakes were frozen primarily, and the migration was just further south where we'd come from. And we decided as we were leaving that afternoon, driving back to camp, we decided, well, it's too early for up here. We'll retreat, go back to where we started. And, we'll finish up there. It's no problem. We'll leave as soon as the sun starts coming up. We can see those tire tracks cutting through the country. And as we were leaving, there was a little area, probably 5 acres, with knee deep or shallower water. It's just a little low-lying area that had collected some snow melt. And the water was open because the sun was sitting at just the aspect was such that sun was hitting it. And it was wall-to-wall mallard and pintails. And we sat there and glassed it from about a half mile away, Ben. And, we got to talking. John and I did. I said, John, you know good and well those ducks have never, ever heard a duck call. They've never heard a duck call. And we're watching. It's just beautiful. Man, this was in April. You know how beautiful those birds were in April? It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And so I said, Gala, we'd like to hunt there in the morning before we leave. He says, really? I said, yeah, we'd like to hunt there if it's okay. And so we drove down. Of course, the birds flew away and we drove down because look, after the cows and the yaks and the camels and the sheep and the goats and whatever else those nomads were grazing, it was eating down the bare dirt. It was still kind of, hadn't got growing season yet. So the grass hadn't come back. It was just bare dirt. And we wondered how we were going to hide. I said, Gala, what about that? We stopped. There was one of them round, they call it a gur. The Russians call it a yurt. That's how those people live up there in the mountains. I said, I remember seeing some livestock. Do you think he'd have a couple of bales of hay? He said, oh, yeah, I'm sure he'd have some hay. I said, do you think he'd sell us a couple of bales? He goes, well, he might. What do you want it for? I said, well, we're going to use it to hide. And he said, yeah, I'm sure we can talk him into it. I said, well, how much does he want? And I don't know, Ben, of something like 50,752, Mongolian dollars. I'm like,
right.
Good gosh, how much is that? $6. I was like, yeah, let's go buy a couple of bales. So, and I know to this day, he and his family are wondering what those two Americans that didn't have any livestock with them wanted with his 2 bales of hay. But we paid him. We went back. And the next morning,
they're still telling stories about that. Yeah,
they're still telling stories. And but what we did is we just that's all we had. I mean, the layout blind would have been great. We didn't have it. It's all the way back home in America. So what we did is we just busted open the hay bales on top of us and put our pack behind our head and had our decoys out front and we hunted and we shot some mallards and shot some pintails and shot a couple of pair of ruddy shell ducks just because. And I stood up because it's time to get beaten down south, and I waved, and our guide had been sitting up on the top of the mountain there about a half mile or so away and just watching. And he came in that morning. Understand, they don't have a duck hunting culture. They hunt ibex and things of that nature. So he'd been sitting there watching us all morning, and he came up and he said, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I go, what? He says, the birds would come in, and they'd get right above y'all, and all of a sudden they would pop their wings would stop flapping, and they would begin to circle. And he said, and they would try to land right in front of you. I go, yeah, isn't that great? And I pulled my call out, whack, 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 whack. And his eyes got big. He's like, then he looked down at the duck we had laid out, and they were all drakes, and he says, what are the chances that only drakes would come in? He said, that's amazing. I said, no, we were choosing drakes. He goes, why? I said, because. Just because. It's not trophy hunting like shooting your ibex, but what's the point shooting a hen in April? We're in Mongolia. We don't need to kill a bunch. We're not hunting for meat, so we made a sport of it. And when I put it in terms of ibex, I saw the light bulb switch. He got it. He'd never been exposed to that, but all of a sudden, having watched us work the ducks and get them close and shoot just the drakes, a light went off. He got it. And there's a little bit of joy in that. That was a very, we shot the bar-headed geese. We shot some of these bucket list species we went for that took working outside that playbook. But to me, one of the most memorable hunts was that showing somebody.
Do you get a sense of being a pioneer like shooting ducks in ways that they haven't been shot there in locations that, aren't typically hunted in that manner. Do you ever get a sense of like pioneerism, or frontierism, I should say?
A little bit, kind of like exploring new horizons, and
Yeah.
and it's such a digital world, and it's such a, I mean, it's been, boy, I love to read stories or watch documentaries about, the gold rush, the Western expansion of America, or the discovery of America, and all. I love that kind of history. And let's face it, man, it's the year 2019. The world's been discovered. There's very, it's not like, then. Wouldn't it have been
Right.
wonderful to, can you imagine, like in Dances with Wolves? Can you imagine being Lieutenant Dunbar and going and hunting the North Platte River for ducks back in the 1850s? Well, how cool would that be? Well, those days
Yeah.
are over. But really, by chasing some of these experiences and chasing some of these new adventures, it is a little bit like that. We have brought to market some pretty some hunts that people wouldn't even conceive. I mean, South Africa is a prime one. I mean, some people know there's bird hunting there, but let's face it, it's known for animals.
Right.
But the bird hunting in South Africa, quality and quantity rivals Mexico and Argentina. It's right there in the top three, done right. And but yeah, I Pakistan. Who's ever heard of hunting ducks in Pakistan? You think of Pakistan, you think of up there around the Afghanistan border, all the mountains and rocks. But look at it on a map. Man, the center of Pakistan is a green valley called the Indus River. It's full of ducks. All those ducks are migrating through there. It's a corridor. And it's amazing. Azerbaijan.
Oh yeah.
Azerbaijan is really one of my favorite hunts right now. And never mind the fact we're hunting within a dozen miles of Iran. It's fine. It's safe. It's stable. It's fun. It's good. I love it. And how I found it was, we kept hearing about the Volga River in Russia. And as we explored it and did some work and did some research, we realized it's a flyway area. It's the birds are not, they're traveling down the Volga River out of Siberia and other parts of Russia. In the same way, birds coming out of Canada and North Dakota are traveling through South Dakota or Iowa. It's a flyway area. So,
Right.
and so even if we went and hunted eastern Russia on the Volga River in October and we timed it right, they wouldn't be pretty. And I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. It took me a while to think this through, but one day it just happened to dawn on me, well, where the heck did the Volga River go? It goes to Caspian Sea. So there starts my search for Azerbaijan. We wanted to get into some of those Asian species and experience some of that stuff that can't be done anywhere else. And believe it or not, mallards and pintails and shovelers and gadwalls, Eurasian green wings, Eurasian widgeons are the big bread and butter ducks over there. But then you get into a lot of cool stuff like the red crested pochard. And that's a really, really cool species and a lot of fun to hunt. It's a diver. Call them in like you would any other poacher or diver, and they decoy wonderfully when they're around. But that's kind of how that started. And that, that's what compels me personally is not the species. I don't collect species. I collect experiences and adventures and memories. And like I say, duck hunting is very subjective, but that's what personally compels me. I like, if I asked what my favorite hunt was, I would tell you the next one. That's my favorite duck hunt, fan. It's the very next one.
Very poetic. Very poetic. So out of all, in just the same way that you probably culturally shocked your guide there in Mongolia, what's the flip side? What's some of the biggest cultural shocks that you've experienced in all your travels?
Oh, I tell people everybody wants to be Ramsey Russell till it's time to do Ramsey Russell shit. You ever seen that? Have you ever seen that meme? You see those kind of memes that say it's like 6 pictures and it's like, what your mom thinks you do, what your wife
Yeah,
thinks you
yeah.
do. Yeah, well, it's a lot like that. I mean, it's a lot like that. And, there's been some cultural shocks. Pakistan, Pakistan would be the largest cultural shock. And I had a very good time there. I shot more ducks one afternoon in Pakistan than I've shot anywhere else on earth.
Mm.
And I quit. I quit shooting because it was 90 something degrees I was hot and I wasn't feeling well. Anyway, I got something. I called it amoebic dysentery. I don't know what it was, but it was bad. And I quit. And, but I'll tell you, cultural shock was this. We were staying with a very prominent feudal lord. Uh, Britain colonized a lot of country. India was one of them. It's under British colonial rule. And I don't understand all the intricacies of how that worked, but I know enough to say, generalize it like this. They would come in and whatever with the economy, but they would give prominent families, positions of wealth and power to kind of help govern their sovereignty. They did the same thing in Africa back in the day. And a lot of countries did, but they did that over in India. And after World War II, they, well, I mean, they had to let those empires go because they had to go back and build Great Britain. I mean,
Yeah.
Germany just bombed them to obliteration. And so the last thing they did, well, one of the last things they did politically was they ceded, they negotiated a treaties of sort between the Muslims and the Hindus. The Hindus stayed in India. The Muslims went to a little corner of India, carved out, and now called Pakistan. That's how that all worked. That's where the Muslims went. And those feudal lords retained their power and their wealth. And that's how that country worked. And so when we were invited to come over, we were going to be the guest of one of those feudal lords. And it was amazing. It was a palace, a compound. And there was a Bengal tiger. Man, I mean, I've seen a lot of game rooms in my life, but I had never seen a Bengal tiger mounted, let alone the Mercors and everything else. That was very impressive. He had the most incredible gun collection I've ever seen. I'm talking these handmade Purdy's and Hollands, but they weren't art. They were firearms. He used them. They had been used. They had scratches on the wood and barrels and stuff. So he was a hunter. And so we went into that environment, but in terms of cultural differences, I'll never forget this. It's like we showed up to go duck hunting the first afternoon, and there were 120 staff members, and they were wearing, I don't know what you call that. It kind of looks like medical scrubs, all different colors that they wear in India.
Yeah.
Baggy pants, baggy shirt. There was orange, there was blue, there was purple, there was green. I mean, there's all kinds of colors, and there were the age disparity was say 8 years old to 70. And there were 120 of them gathering around with decoys and blah, blah, blah. And as I got out of the truck, I was introduced and 7 or 8 of them grabbed up a bunch of supplies, chairs and ammo and all kinds of stuff. And down the path they go. I'm right behind them. That's my guide staff. And they kicked off their sandals and rolled up their pants, and out they go throw out decoys. And there really wasn't big, tall cover. It was like these little bitty cedar trees about 4 foot tall or less. And there was an old man. The old man was in the blind with me. And I don't know what he'd say, but whenever the duck around, he'd say something and I could barely hear him. And of course, I got old duck hunter ears. It's almost like he whispered, and in a snap of a finger, the 7 other guys would just vanish. And I mean, just think of a man wearing bright blue or bright purple garbs, just absolutely vanishing. And he vanished. They get right in those cedar trees and just one lone cedar tree might hold 2 of them, boom, disappear. And duck hunt's not a perfect sport. Sometimes you sell them. And if I sell the duck, and it's hot, maybe waist deep water and that duck fall out there about 90 yards and swimming. They didn't come back without him.
Oh,
Didn't lose a single bird. They were, we didn't speak the same language, but we communicated to them that we might want to keep, some of the clients may want to keep some of these birds. Please don't cut the throats, halil them without asking. And that old man would, when a new species came up, he would present it, he would hold it out and look at me. If it's something I didn't want or whatever, I'd shake my head and they'd do their process of haliling it. And before you even do it, I mean, we were there to shoot ducks. So if a seagull flew over or something else flew over, they would indicate no, not knowing if I knew or not, because maybe some people don't know. And a pelican flew over, big white pelican. And them boys they appeared from somewhere they'd been hiding. And several of them were indicating for me to shoot this pelican. I'm like, no. Because, I mean, they're not going to kill something they're not going to use or eat. And they were pointing, they were saying, shoot that pelican. So I shot him. And I couldn't, I mean, boy, they went out there and got him and drug him up and whatever, and I couldn't figure, I said, golly, surely these guys aren't eating that darn pelican. And I later asked my host what they would do with it. And he said they used the oil. I guess back in his oil gland, they would use the oil off that bird for rheumatoid. They'd rub it on, the joints if they had pain in the joints or something. But that ain't what freaked me out. Now, all this was fine up to this point. So we're staying up in the compound. We've got like an apartment or a suite on the compound. And that's where there's 4 or 5 bedrooms for each of us clients. We're staying there. And what freaked me out was there were staff there that would wait on you, so one day I stepped out of the shower. It's hot as blaze. I took me a shower and I'm toweling off, walking around my room butt naked and getting ready to get dressed. And by the time one of them bust in, he got a platter of food. I'm like, yeah, I'll be out in just a minute. Go on. And so I turn around and I realize he's following me. I'm like, what the? Everywhere I looked, the man guy, he just followed me with his food, this platter of food. I'm like, hey, I finally walked to the door and opened up and say, get out. He don't speak. I'm like, leave. Mama knows, and I kind of eased him out the door and shut it. Well, that kept happening. Okay. That kept happening. And finally I say something to my host. I say, look, like one day I'm walking around, and outside the compound, I can hear the mosque music going. And it was very beautiful at that place. I was walking around just taking pictures of the compound. I mean, it was beautiful, a beautiful garden, a beautiful lake, the sun and the artwork was just, man, it was just real different. I wasn't in Mississippi no more. And outside the wall, I could hear that mosque music. You know what I'm talking about, that man singing. Yeah. And I look behind me, and there's a little old man following me, and he's got his hands pressed together, and he keeps like bowing, like, and I'm walking and taking pictures, and this guy's following me, and I'm like, I start getting paranoid. Like, is he telling me to buy, that it's prayer time, not to do nothing? Am I breaking some kind of etiquette, taking pictures during prayer time? I don't know. And, he finally walks off. And so finally I say something. I say, look, I'm tripping here. What's up with these guys walking in the bedroom and following me around and me telling them to leave? And here I am butt naked trying to get dressed. I mean, what's up with this? I don't get it. He's like, and he got a real confused look, and he goes, who are you talking about? I go, I said, them guys right there, those guys with the food. And he goes, Ramsey, dear, they're servants. I go, I don't care who they are. I'll come out and eat when I get dressed. He said, you don't understand what I'm saying to you, Ramsey. They're servants. They're nobody. They're carpet. I go, huh? He says, they don't see you. They're servants. They're carpet under your feet. They're nobody. And I'm like, wow, dude, that's a little hard for an American to get his mind wrapped around.
Yeah.
They weren't staff. They weren't employees. They were servants, biblical servants. And like, back to my field staff, who I came to really like and appreciate. I didn't eat after them, but they, one day that little boy, 8 years old, he's going to be the old man. And it's just, they're servants. And that was culturally, Pakistan was the most, it wasn't the religion. It wasn't that. It was that part of it that was way different than
Yeah.
anything I'd ever experienced. That was very, very different. And, but I loved it, and I'll go back. I know Jake and I have talked about going back. I've got a couple of clients that want to go back. I just want to put a few more people together and get. It'll probably be another year or two, probably 2 years. We're going to try to go back because it really was an amazing hunt, an amazing area, very, very different. Azerbaijan, very, very culturally different. We're out there in a little pirogue with push poles, and our people have great ammunition, good firearms, a whole room full of mojos that we've brought over the years. They get it. The blinds are built well, but then you run into a whole subset of people now. Even though it's, well, they sell ducks on the side of the street, like boiled peanuts in the deep south. Waterfowl are for sale. So they're market hunting. And some of the things you meet and see, that the way these guys hunt, they're some of the best serious, the real market hunters. These guys are killers.
Right.
Just stone cold, over nothing. I brought home a decoy. They thought I was crazy. It wasn't the decoys we hunt over. We hunt over great decoys over there. It was a market hunter's decoy. It was literally like a piece of foam and some black visqueen and wrapped up with some copper wire. They were very crude looking, and they were shot to heck and back. They were disposable because he just made them,
Yeah.
with whatever he had on hand for free. And then his ammo were hulls uncrimped, and he'd put the powder and put the charge and put a little wax on top and tamp it. Probably 1,000 feet per second.
No.
But boy, did they kill them ducks. Yeah, it's money in a poor country.
Yeah.
And so, that was astounding. And I always feel like I learned something. I want to learn something. I like visiting with these people, and I'm going to tell you one thing about duck hunting in Azerbaijan. I learned. I'm American. I'm a tad impatient, probably a tad spoiled, like a lot of people. They aren't. If I might have to squint and imagine that dot is a duck, but if they see a duck, they go into game mode. There's no half measures. When they push that P-row in the grass, it's perfectly hidden. It's perfectly stable. So you can stand up and shoot. Everything's perfect. They've got blind situations. They put the decoys out. If the wind swaps, out of the grass you go. You P-row across the other side of the pocket. You're back in it again. Now the wind's right. The sun's right. The decoys never got moved. They make a game plan, but every duck they see, it might be a mile high. Every duck they see, they treat like a possible candidate for the decoys. They go into play for keeps mode. Every duck they see,
Wow.
they don't relax. Relaxing, playing on your phone, they don't play on phones when they're in the duck blind. They're hunting, and they're game on, and it's a real serious intensity, and I gain from that. I love being around that.
Yeah. Yeah. In line with kind of that last question, what's the biggest oh shit moment you've had?
Oh, I don't know. The first one that comes to mind, I wasn't in a duck blind. We were going to Mongolia, and a client and I decided we were going to stop over in China. Neither of us had ever been. You can get it. If you're there for 72 hours or less, it doesn't require a visa. And we decided we wanted to go climb the wall of China. Walk. It was built to keep the warn Mongols out, Genghis Khan out of their backyard. So that offered a little bit of, cultural context to the whole experience. And we landed in Beijing, and we got up the little 72-hour visa line. Probably took 2 hours to go through there. And when we came up in broken English, she's asking, do we have any paperwork? Well, man, we gave her everything but our library card. What other paper? And at one point in time, she took out our gun forms. Oh, you have a gun? I go, yeah. She could fold it back up and hand it to me. Well, when I booked that hunt, my Mongolia guy had set up, this travel guy had set up Mary Wang to come get us in Beijing and tour us around. I had called him up right before I left for the airport and said, hey, do you mind sending me my firearm permit, my temporary transit permit or whatever for the firearm going through China? He goes, no, you don't need it. Mary Wang will have it. I said, well, I get that, but this is my first rodeo. I just feel comfortable having it. He said, no, relax. It's all taken care of. And I said, look, send it to me. I'm not getting on a plane without it. Well, he faxes this thing, and it's freaking Peking Chinese. For all I know, it was a restaurant menu. I don't know what it was. It was all Chinese, Mandarin. I couldn't read it, but I folded it up and put it in my bag, made a copy, put it in my gun case. Off I go. Well, it took us so long to get through that in-transit line that by the time we got clear across the Beijing airport to baggage, every 5 acres of bags had been pulled off conveyor belts, and we walked right up to ours, and there they were. There's my suitcase, there's my gun case, there's his suitcase, there's his gun case. We put it on, and the instructions I had received was, Mary Wang will meet you right around baggage. Well, Mary Wang wasn't there. So we proceed towards the exit. She'll find you, don't worry. We get all the way up to that x-ray machine, where you put your bags on the x-ray machine before you exit customs, and we've been traveling probably for 24 hours. I'm going to say, I don't know, it's a while. And I'm just sitting there kind of coasting and just watching the guy who's watching the screens. My x-ray stuff goes through, and man, you should have seen how straight his back got when he saw that firearm. And I don't know if you've ever been to China, but there's billions of people in China, and they're all trying to be heard. So they're very loud people. And he got straight, jumped up and started talking. Well, they all started talking loud, and then he left and went back to a room and came back out, and there was 15 people behind him, and they're all trying to overtalk each other. And I look at my client and go, I think he's excited about that gun. I don't know. And they come and talking, and they grab our bags and they indicate for us to follow them. We go back to this little holding room, and there's a steel desk, no chairs. There's 2 steel chairs, and this bar, like if you were to sit in that chair and they could put a bar across your lap and lock you in. And that's it. That's all there was. They put our gear up on that desk. I'm thinking, boy, I'm not sitting in that chair. And as we're sitting there and this thing's unfolding, it goes from 15 to 30 to 35 to 40. I felt like a sardine, and people just piling in, and they're talking and trying to out talk each other and everything else. And, I know what's what. And I'm trying to get to my bag, my little carry-on bag to grab my permit. And I mean, they're like breaking into kung fu fighting mode and everything. I mean, they're freaking out. Me trying to reach to a bag, I mean, they're beside themselves. And I finally make a break, just reach there, grab my permit, whoop it out. And the minute that he snatches it from me, the minute he reads it, you can tell, okay, it's calm. And somebody, they start to calm down. Because apparently it says something about having a firearm in China. And the whole room, all 50 or 60 or whatever there is, I mean, they start to calm down. And one of them speaks a little more English than the other one. He says, do you have a translator, or are you supposed to meet somebody here? I said, yeah, Mary Wang. He goes, can you call her? I said, yeah, I'll call her. I call her up. She goes, where are you? I go, you don't want to know where I'm at right now, Mary. The question is, where are you? And I put him on the phone with her, and she come back there. And then the minute she walked in, it all started again. I mean, they're all yelling. And I don't know what's going on. I just know, and, finally she, everybody calmed down. She said, well, everything's fine. She said, did you show your gun paperwork to a lady at the visa station? I said, yes. She said, well, she's either going to jail or she's fired. He said, because she was supposed to notify the police, and the police were supposed to notify airport security. And
Oh,
she said,
man.
the good news is everything's fine. Everything's good. The bad news is we're going to be here a long time because now it's got to go up 2 chains, back down. They got to meet and talk. Then we got to go to the police to turn in your gun. So we ended up being, from the time we landed to the time we walked out of that airport, we were there for 9 hours. And that was one of them times, that was some of that real Ramsey Russell shit, and now, guess what? We don't go through China we don't go through China going to Mongolia. We go through Seoul, Korea, and avoid all that.
Did you see the Great Wall?
Yeah, we did. And I've got to tell you, I was ready for it. I was ready. I thought I was ready for it. I wanted to take pictures and I wanted to see this thing. It's very iconic. You can see it from outer space. And I looked at Google and I was looking at all those photos, and it's an optical illusion because I know there's a few stretches of stairs and stuff, but what I imagined was this rolling, undulating stone sidewalk until I got to the bottom of it and looked up, and I realized it's all stairs. Now there might be the part we walked for about 8 miles there might be a few little 10-foot sections of smooth or non-staired area, but the rest was stairs. And I just wasn't expecting it. I'm like, okay, well, this is fine. But I go, Mary, how far are we going up this thing? She goes, we're going up to the top. Well, I could look up there about a half mile and I could see a guard station, one of them little, rook looking guard station. I go, oh, okay, well, that's not too bad. Well, from there, I looked up and there was 5 more to the top.
Oof.
Well, by the time I got 34th one, I was all in at that point. I was ready to go. And, those stairs weren't, they aren't all 8 or 12 or whatever inch. I mean, one might be 3, one of them might be 2.5 foot stair to stair. It's like climbing a mountain of stairs. But it was really kind of a cool experience. I got to tell you, it really put China into context and as a precursor to actually going into Mongolia and the whole Genghis Khan thing. It was a really cool experience. Now I'll say one final thing about China. If you had asked me prior to flying into Beijing, did I like Chinese food? I'd have said, I love it. I mean, man, who doesn't like egg foo young and spring rolls and chop suey? I mean, yeah, I love it. No. That ain't Chinese food. That's Chinese American food. We went to Beijing, and old Mary Wayne carried us to this one restaurant. Man, she bragged about pork something. That was the best dish this restaurant's famous for it. So we all ordered it. And I took a bite and it just hit me wrong. I said, man, this tastes like that old brown stink bait smells. I know. And so I drank me a little Coca-Cola and took another bite. And that was it. I said, man, I wasn't imagining nothing. That was it. And we luckily about 2 blocks from the hotel, we found a restaurant that made Peking duck. And if wild ducks tasted like Peking ducks, they'd be extinct. It's like eating butter. And for 3 nights, I ate Peking duck and didn't eat nothing the rest of the trip. I tried a little bit. I tried this. I tried that. I'm like, nope, I'm eating Peking duck. And so I don't guess I really do like real Chinese food. And but it was very, very interesting culture, interesting place. That was probably the biggest oh shit moment I had was shit.
Yeah, that's quite the one too. I know you got to get going here shortly, but I do have just a couple more questions that I wanted to ask you. The first one, the one that I really wanted to start off with, but I think that you've done a lot of interviews on podcasts and you've written a lot about it, but you say that your grandfather got you in with dove hunting, right?
He did. He sure did. My grandfather Russell, he was a hunter, and raised my daddy and my uncle to be hunters. But they just in adult life they really didn't hunt a lot. My dad did, and but my granddad did, and hunting on a Mississippi dove field. That first is just a rambunctious grandchild, 4, 5, 6 years old, trying to beat the dog out to pick up the birds and things of that nature. That's kind of how I got started. And later, back in those old days, he had bought a Remington 1100 20 gauge, 28-inch barrel. And Remington's kind of a heavy gun. 1100 is kind of a heavy gun relative to, say, Benelli Montefeltro. It's a heavy gun. Back in those days, he just chopped the stock off. I mean, took it to somebody who sawed the stock in half and re-glued the pad on, sanded a little bit so it fit. Boom, there you go, son. That's your gun. And that's but put one shell in, and after I got 10 minutes coaching practice on lead the bird. Put me off in a part of the field that no matter what, I couldn't hurt nobody.
Yeah.
And I learned to shoot. That's how you did things back then.
I just wanted to ask you then too, because obviously something stuck and something, about that's really important to you. What's it, if you don't mind sharing, what's your fondest memory of your granddad when you guys are out hunting?
That's an easy question because we were hunting over in the Mississippi Delta. And this might have been one of the last years I remember him actually hunting. His health failed him soon thereafter, but I remember he was a great shot. He really was a very, very good shot. Maybe shot a box of shells to get his 12 bird limit back then. Maybe not even a box of shells. He and his old law partner, Mr. Highland Phelps, were just wonderful, wonderful people, wonderful shots. And I can remember he was on top of a little short lake levee picking birds. He was done. And I hadn't hardly got started. My daddy was just across the ditch ways, and he was probably, almost done with his limit. So I was just sitting right there below the levee, and a dove flew over, and I obeyed my granddad. I loved him. That's just the generation we were. And yes sir, no sir, and you did what you were told to do. That's just the way that relationship was. But I remember a dove flew over, and I saw it, and I was starting to mount my gun, and I could hear him saying, "No, no, the bird's too high. No, don't shoot." It was too late. I was already in the zone. And I swung through and killed that bird. And I felt bad. I mean, I kind of disobeyed him. He said, "Don't shoot," and I did. But I killed the bird. And I went and picked it up and brought it up there to him. He said, "Well, I reckon you're old enough to call your own shots now." And that was just a real indelible moment I remember with him. He was trying to coach me, try to do best. But I guess at some point in time in a young man's life, however young, you got to make decisions on your own. But that moment just flew up when you asked me about that. I'll never forget that. And I never will forget. I never saw the man breast anything. We were always the last in the field leaving in the evening because we picked our doe. Hey, by gosh, we picked them. The whole thing. When he cooked them, he'd cook them various and sundry different ways, but he wanted the whole bird. And that same with ducks. He would never breast a duck. We picked them. That's just the way that generation was. That's the way he was. He never would fillet a fish. You scale the whole thing. Jeez. Whether it's catfish, you skin them, and if it's a bass, you scale them, and if it's a brim, you scale them. You didn't fillet stuff like that. It just wasn't. It was against his religion. Now, those are two things I remember most about him.
That's great. That's great. Well, thankfully that he left such an impression on you and got you started and fired up, so that so many people could experience all the things that you've given to the hunting world and many different people.
Oh. Thank you, Ben. I dove hunting. The downside of duck season somewhere is I spend a lot of time. Tomorrow's the first day of summer, and I leave for Argentina. It's wintertime down there. So the heat doesn't get any better. It's the older I get, the more that old southern heat wears on me. And I'm it's just something about those days that it's just something about that dove hunt, how I got started with him and Highland Phelps and my daddy. It's just something silly about it. I mean, I woke up years later in a burn center, and it dawned on me at some point in time that it was Labor Day. Something on the TV, it was Labor Day, and I realized that. Parade or something. And it was the most gut-wrenching moment. all I'd been through and everything else. But what I realized, and right then in that instant, was that for the first time in my life, and I was 16 years old, I wasn't in a dove field. I mean, I would tell you kind of tongue in cheek that I was probably about that age when I realized Labor Day was a national holiday. I thought that was just the weekend we went dove hunting, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you know, and when I was younger, because my dad really didn't hunt a lot and my granddad's health was deteriorating, he didn't hunt a lot. I mean, really, there were probably years through that time period, that dove hunting, those 3 days constituted all, or maybe half at best, of my entire hunting year. And I really just, I vowed that given a choice, I'd never, if I ever got out of that place, I would never miss another opening day of dove season. And I don't, I will not. I mean, we may not have a great dove field lined up, or it don't matter. We're going. Well, now my children are older. One son's in the U.S. Marine Corps stationed in Okinawa, and the oldest one's in college, but he comes around, you know, and but to all of us, I knew how it affected it growing up, because last September, my youngest son was at boot camp on Paris Island, and we were communicating through a little online app. You know, you kind of write letters, and he wrote me a letter, and he said, you know, I know what this weekend is, and I'm not going to be there with y'all. And that's just our thing. And it's just, you know, it's kind of like the old man is touching my kids through me, through our habit. It's just something profound about that dove season. And I do like, I heard a podcast the other day, they were talking about last meals, what would you choose? And I think it'd be bacon wrapped dove breast on opening day with my family. That would be what I'd go for. So anyway.
It kind of circles all around. You know, we were talking a little bit about finding in the pre-interview here, we were talking a little bit about finding the light switch. And I think if a lot more people viewed that as their light switch, they'd find it a little easier.
It would be. You know, I see it, and I get it. You know, I'm 53 years old. You know, I can remember being the age I looked at folks my age thinking they were old folks. So I see it. I've got a 22-year-old son. I've got a 19-year-old son, and they're my best hunting partners. They're my favorite hunting partners, and my kids. I'll said it once, I'll say it again. Your best hunting partners are the one you raise. I love hunting with my family, but we're in different phases. And I can remember, I think, being at that age. But what a hunt constitutes to me now, a successful hunt, an enjoyable hunt, is totally different than a young person, especially in light of all this social media success. And everybody, you know, limited out and got this and got that and shot a band, and, you know, it can wear on you a little bit. Well, you know, let me tell you about social media. It ain't real. It is, but it ain't. It's a snapshot of reality. Point in case, you know, the smiling family sitting at Disneyland. You ever been to Disneyland? I know you got a 16-month-old child. You're going. Let me tell you how that works. You know, there on your Facebook page going to be this beautiful picture, and y'all are all smiling. The family's happy, like you having the best time in the world. Because you are. But just 60 seconds before that picture was taken, the mama saying, "You better hush. I'm gonna give you something to cry about. Quit crying." I mean, it's long lines, and it's hot, and it's, you know, it ain't perfect. That smiling shot is just a glimpse of the overall thing. You know, hunting is hunting, and you know, I've been blessed to hunt a lot of different places and hunt a lot of days in a year, and there are those days that the duck gods smile and you can do no wrong, and everybody's a rock star, and the ducks are just lining up to come in and die. And then there's those days at the other side that you ain't gonna kill a duck. It just, no matter what you do, it just ain't gonna happen. It is not in the cards. It just the ducks aren't down. The ducks are stale. There's no wind. There's no shadows to hide in. It's just one of them days. But most days, I have found that most days are somewhere in between. somewhere in between. It's that big 80% in between.
Yeah.
And that's just fine. You know what I'm saying? You're getting to do something you love. You're getting to hunt a beautiful renewable resource. Hopefully share time with friends and family. And guys, life's too short. If you don't like your hunting partners, find some new ones. You know, because that's what it's all about. I love to duck hunt. I love what I do. But being the people part of what I do is the most enjoyable part. I love every duck hunter has stories. Every duck hunter. And I get to spend time in the blind with so many people, and I get to hear their stories, and I get to see them at their best moments, and the people, but the duck guides we work with, the hunters, I get to be a part of the best parts of their lives, the happiest parts of their lives, and I get to see them at their best. Good duck hunts, whether it's in your backyard or halfway across the world, they don't happen by accident. They don't. A little bit of luck, because the weather's good and the migration's on, and the rest is effort. Your part, the scout's part, the guide's part, your buddy's part. It's how the game is played. It doesn't happen by accident. But no matter what you do sometimes, it's just not going to be that quote limit unquote. It's just going to be duck hunting. And that in and of itself is very rewarding. But I just getting to see good guides, good operators. Last year, one of my very favorite places on earth to hunt down in Argentina. It is the most wild and remote place I've ever been. It's a 130 square mile marsh. On a good year, it's 10 hours from the airport. 10 hours, not 9 hours, 10. This year, because the roads are wet coming in, we're going to be in 4-wheel drive. It might be 11 or 12 hours getting to the lodge. That's okay. Once we're there, we're in that kind of place I want my ashes scattered when I die. That kind of place. Hunting by myself, wild ducks in a wild place. And it's magical. Last year was a drought. And we were shooting about half the number of birds we normally shoot. But it was requiring a monumentous effort on behalf of the staff to scout and to find those birds. You see what I'm saying? It didn't happen by accident. And I appreciated that. And I would ask anybody, we owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the resource. And we owe it to our kids and to our fellow hunters to respect the hunt for what it is. Those ducks, they aren't put there just to prop up our egos. You know what I'm saying? They're really not. We're all hunting because it's fun. It's a recreation. It's not. It's not to fill our refrigerator, even though we all eat them. It's not. It's a recreation. But enjoy it for what it is. Every moment of it. There's a lot of satisfaction if you're only going to shoot one duck, because that's just what the day brings. Make it the best. It's a lot of satisfaction to me if I'm only going to shoot one duck, that I own that duck when he came in, that we negotiated an agreement there on calling and decoying how he come in and on executing the shot. And as a southern duck hunter, you got to have the faith of a mustard seed, or else play golf. I mean, you got to have that faith. What I've learned is, I don't belong to the best place on, my camp is not the best duck hunting property on earth. It's not, but it's perfect for me because there's no cheating. If the ducks are down, you've got to play for keeps. You got to play by the rules. I mean, you've got to be hidden. You've got to pay attention. You've got to know, like tomorrow morning going duck hunting. Great. I can't make a plan for where I'm going to hunt, what I'm going to do based on the weather, because I got to go draw. I might get the first draw, I might get the fifth draw. So plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, I got to be prepared for, depending on who's going to draw what. But that's fun.
Yeah.
And then once you get to that hole, okay, here's the hand I've been dealt. Now, how am I going to play this? And one day, a friend, a fellow camp member, we were out there hunting, and Ben, it was magic. We went just where I wanted to go. The weather was perfect. It's this tight little hole, maybe an acre of water surrounded by willow trees. It's in about a 40-acre impoundment, but just one little corner. And the wind was hard out of the northwest. It was clear as a bell. And the gadwalls loved that spot, and especially in that wind and those conditions and how we set up. And it was just, as I was pushing my little sled out, we don't drive in, we walk in. And I sledded, pull a little sled behind me with my decoy, and I was pushing a little skim ice out of the way, and gadwalls were all around me. And when I can hear a gadwall, they're close. And they're landing on the water and landing on the ice all around me, and I'm thinking, oh boy, this is it. And I get the decoys just like I want them in that spot. And I get back, and I've got 5 minutes before shooting time, and I unzip my jacket, and I'm cooling off, and the ducks are just fogging in. I'm like, boy, this is gonna be this is what it's all about. You go and you go and you go and you go, and boom, there it is. And lickety split, I'm done. And I break out my coffee thermos. I'm waiting on David to finish up. And the volley, the interim between the volleys kind of stretches out a little bit, which is perfect because you get time to visit. Life happens between the volleys. I mean, let's face it, man. You get to talk about things that you don't talk about in regular world. You get to talk about it in duck blind. And David asked me, he says, Ramsey, I got a question for you. I said, yeah, man. He says, it's a great hunt this morning, but it's a great hunt. It's a great morning. I said, yeah, man, it's wonderful. And he said, well, don't take this wrong, but he says, this isn't the best camping on earth, is it? I go, no, it's far from it, I'm sure. And he goes, well, why do you hunt here? He says, you can hunt anywhere in the world you want to. Why? What fires you up about hunting here? And, well, my granddad killed his last duck on that property. My kids killed the first duck. That's for starts. I said, David, if I want to go shoot a bunch of ducks standing knee deep in corn, I can just go down to Argentina and do that in certain places. If I want to do this, I want to do that, But I said, what I like about hunting where I hunt is just the raw game. There's no cheating. If you're gonna shoot a limit or not, if you're gonna hunt and play for, you've got to play for keeps. You've got to be hidden right. You've got to know where you're going in the dark. You've got to set everything just right. I've been hunting there for a long time. I know those things, but you've got to honor the sport. And you know what? You may not come out with 3 ducks, but if you're sitting there playing on your cell phone, that flock of gadwalls flew through, you might not come home with any. You got to stay focused and play for keeps. And I like that. I like, we don't have a lot of blinds. We have a few. Take the kids to, or go get to if the wind's just right and the ducks are in that area. But mostly how we hunt is just how I grew up hunting, standing waist deep in the button bush of the willows, just immersed in it. And I love it. It's just that to me is real duck hunting. That's what I really like about it, is that game. And it doesn't take 6 ducks. I mean, let's face it, guys, 3 ducks here, and that's not going to change the course of history. It's not going to change who you are. It's not going to change your life. It's not how it, and I'm all about getting that limit if I can. But the same day, it's just 3 ducks. Sometimes the ducks win, and that's okay. I can accept that. As long as I did my best, I can accept that.
I really appreciate you coming on, Ramsey, and I feel absolutely blessed to have, gotten so much of your time as you're probably putting off packing to talk to me. And I really,
that's okay. I look, I'm very flattered and humbled that y'all had me on here and find what I have to talk about interesting. Thank y'all very much.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. And we, I know I speak for all the listeners. We didn't get to all the listener questions, but I'm sure we'll chat again someday soon.
Thank you, Ben.